Well, as the flood emergency continues across eastern Australia, the damage bill from this week's deluge is expected to top $1 billion. Prime Minister Julia Gillard today visited flood-stricken Wagga Wagga, where thousands of people have been forced to evacuate, and she said face many long months of recovery. The economic cost and the massive clean-up bill now raise new questions over the government's promise of a budget surplus in the coming year. Greg Hoy spent last night and today in Wagga as residents began returning home.
As surging floodwaters finally stopped rising last night, there were no celebrations in deserted downtown streets of Wagga Wagga. That will have to wait. Instead, there was silence. It was an eerie feeling walking down the main street of Wagga today. The centre of this city of 46,700 people had felt very much like a ghost town. It took some hours after engineers had satisfied themselves that the levee banks would not be compromised before power and other essential services were reconnected, and people were finally allowed to flood back in.
Huge sense of relief. Wagga people have been really anxious about all the goings on, the water's rising, fears that the levee would give way. So people are having now a huge sense of relief. There's still apprehension though with people from North Wagga.
Though disaster may have been averted downtown, 300 to 400 houses in North Wagga Wagga remain submerged. One of them the home of Eric Stubbs and his family. What can you tell us about your house now?
I haven't seen my house yet, but I'm guessing it's probably up to about the windowsills. So I've probably got a metre, half a metre of water through it. And now I've got to, I don't know, clean it all up, I guess, and pull it all down and start again.
Though counting their blessings, those who escaped the flooding must still count the cost of business lost with the order to evacuate. What's it meant for your business?
Yeah, we've probably lost between $45,000 and $50,000 over the last 2 days. But I mean, there's a lot of people on North Wagga who lost a lot more than what we've lost.
While the costs to local municipalities are far greater.
The early Conservative estimate for damage to roads alone, local and state roads, is $500 million. That's $500 million. That's severe for local council coffers. State government also can't afford it. So they're going to have to find that money from somewhere.
It was to survey such financial concerns that Prime Minister Julia Gillard toured the Riverina today.
Floodwater is very damaging. I mean, the economic cost of floods is higher than other forms of natural disasters because it does knock around our primary producers, it knocks around small businesses, and it does a lot of damage to infrastructure. We won't know the full toll yet.
The Prime Minister was given a bird's-eye tour of where the flood pressure has shifted to, such as the town of Griffith to the northeast of Wagga Wagga, where 600 people have been evacuated as floodwaters effectively isolated the town.
The potential for that flood emergency in Griffith to last for a couple of weeks as the water passes through the irrigation area. In that area, it's an unprecedented flood event, and a large number of people have been evacuated in the last 24 hours.
Indeed, across the eastern states, floodwaters continue to cause havoc. Huge tracts of farmland and some towns in Victoria's north are expected to be inundated for days, with floodwaters still threatening the town of Nathalia.
The focus of things now is here in town, and the anticipation is that we will have a peak of the flood sometime before midnight. We have a total of probably about 30 towns that are affected to greater and lesser degrees.
In Queensland's southeast, the town of Gympie escaped major flooding last night as the Mary River peaked well below a predicted peak of 15 metres and nowhere near the level it reached 2 weeks ago.
In Australia, we know that we face these kind of disasters only too often. We're a nation who over the last 2 years has seen so much hardship caused by floodwaters. Now we're seeing that hardship here, but whenever we see that hardship come, we see some great Australian spirit too, and I've seen that in spades today.
Throughout such areas, it will be some time before the flood crisis subsides significantly. The question is, what lessons will linger to better prepare for when the rivers inevitably rise again in future?
At the end of the day, what do? Not much you can do. But they've had since 1974 these floods, and I can't understand why there's not a higher levee bank over there to protect the houses over there. But it just doesn't happen.
Why aren't the levee banks higher?
Well, because local councils have always been cash strapped. They're cash strapped because there's rate pegging in New South Wales. We need to put higher levee banks in place. We need to make sure that we store the water when it does flood, and that way our communities can feel safer.
Greg Hoy reporting from Wagga Wagga.